Good afternoon. This is week 3 of AI, Robots, and Ethics, and I want to talk a little bit about what we'll be reading this week and how to access it and make sense of it. So we have 2 readings for this week. The first one is something called Towards Machine Ethics, written by Michael and Susan Anderson along with Chris Arman. And the other essay is an essay from Colin Ellen, Gary Varner, and Jason Zinzer called Prolegomena to Any Future Moral Agent. As you see from the calendar, we are beginning the first segment of our investigation into moral agency. If you remember from last week, the moral relationship is always involving both an actor and a receiver, the moral agent and the moral patient. So we're going to have 3 weeks here where we talk about moral agency and investigate agency, and then we'll have a few weeks where we talk about patiency and talk about the moral patient. But this begins our week of moral agency. So as you begin to access this material and look at it, here's what I want you to keep in mind. First of all, the things you're reading are considered to be seminal essays in machine moral agency. In other words, what the Andersons have done with machine ethics and what Colin Ellen does here and along with Wendell Wallish in Moral Machines. These essays and these books are considered to be really the influential texts in developing this idea of machine moral agency. And the idea stems from what we began thinking about last week, this idea that usually our technologies are considered instruments and therefore neutral tools of human activity. Martin Heidegger calls this the instrumental view of technology and says that it really is the standard sort of default way we look at our technologies, that technology doesn't do anything or mean anything by itself. It's how we as human users employ the technology that matters. We can use it for either good or ill, and we are the ones who are ultimately responsible for what goes well or poorly with regards to our technology and the way that it is utilized. As our technology has gotten to be more autonomous with learning algorithms, with smart systems, and other kinds of autonomy built into the mechanism itself, we are moving away from the instrumental definition and starting to see technologies that have some component of responsible activity or accountability in the mechanism itself. And as a result, both philosophers and engineers have begun to think about the moral responsibilities of the mechanisms. In other words, mechanisms that are designed to make decisions on their own may do things that they're not programmed to do. They may learn new behaviors, and as a result of this, make decisions or initiate actions in the world that could have either good or bad effects. And at that point, it is no longer a human being who is necessarily responsible or accountable for what goes well or doesn't go well, but there may be some sort of accountability in the machine itself, and we may need to begin thinking about programming mechanisms to be ethical. We may need to develop ethical subroutines, if you want to call it that, in our machines so that they are able to decide a course of action and make decisions that are morally informed and could be judged on either moral or legal basis. So the 2 readings we have for this week are 2 different ways of starting to crack open this problem. What it means to be a moral agent, what it means for a machine to be a moral agent, and the opportunities and challenges that that presents to moral thinking and to the way that we operationalize this whole notion of moral agency. Central to a lot of this is the notion that morality could be made computable. That is, ethics could be programmed into a machine, and that machines could somehow be designed to not only access the appropriate data, but be able to process it in such a way as to develop a solution or outcome that could be held as a moral standard, that could be held up to moral evaluation or a sort of legal accountability. So as you read the 2 articles for this week, I want you to think about not only the sort of philosophical angle that is being developed by the Andersons and by Colin Ellen and his collaborators, but also think about the opportunities and challenges that come with extending moral agency to machines. There's obviously some good reasons for doing this, and they will try to make a case for that. but there may be some risks and some dangers to doing this. And we want to be able to evaluate critically what are both the opportunities and the challenges of making our machines or our artifacts into moral actors with some mode of agency where they could be held accountable or responsible for the decisions they make or the actions that they take in the world. So that's all I have for this week. Enjoy the readings. Again, I've given you some questions to read ahead of time. I would say access the questions first before you start reading. Then as you're reading, jot down notes in your notebook or your reading log so that you can begin to formulate solutions or answers to the questions that I've given you as a way of building a response of your own to this to these two texts, so that you got a more critical perspective on what they are about and what they mean. All right, that's it. Have a good week, and I will also post some things on the Facebook page because a lot has happened recently with regards to the question of agency, especially in the area of autonomous weapons. 2 weeks ago, there was a big hearing at the UN on autonomous weapons and the responsibility of developing autonomous weapons. And there's a huge debate going on currently about this notion, and also about autonomous driving vehicles. In other words, cars that drive themselves, trucks that operate on the highway without human operators. It's raising a lot of questions about the accountability of these systems, and it ties in directly to a lot of the work we're doing with machine moral agency. So I'll post that stuff on Facebook. Please look at that too. It's not necessary reading, but I think it's a nice way of tying the more theoretical work we're doing with the philosophical texts into some real world applications, so you can see how this stuff really matters now for us, and it is not some sort of futuristic thing, but it rather is going on currently, and it matters for a whole lot of decision making that is going on in the area of warfare, in the area of transportation, in the area of law. So that's all I have. Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.